if I'm oversimplistic about office buildings in New York, and this is a very personal view, is that they fall really essentially into two categories. There are those which are, with exceptions and very honourable exceptions, the majority step in response to a 1916 legislation. The other kind are the exceptions, you might say. They reject the setback and they seek to find purer, more Bauhaus-like, simplistic forms. But it's quite interesting that these very, very pure buildings are a rejection of the step buildings that occur in the background of them. I think one could say that your building doesn't really, or your ambitions don't fit into either of those categories, because, as I understand it, what we're really striving for is a building that in the future will have a landmark status. It will be distinguished, but for very powerful reasons, it wants to be in the category of those buildings that step back. What are the significant differences between an as-of-right option, as envisaged in these models, and a new build option? We'll put this on top of this, and we'll take the two away. It's very much about the nature of the structure at the base. It's the quest for something which is more flexible, is more adaptable to future change, because it has fewer column interruption. Ideally, at the base of the building, you would like big footprints and you'd like tall space. In the mid part, something like 150 by 70 feet, you'd like a different kind of space. And when you start to get those extraordinary views over 300 feet out to the park and so forth, you're looking for the qualities that will be offered by a smaller footprint. From the outside, you really want to maintain that urbanity, the existing levels that works with the adjoining buildings, and indeed all the buildings in that area. The opportunity of celebrating the setback, in a way, is a kind of something that could emerge in terms of the relationship between design, market research, and marketing. And the way in which you increase insulation and performance, the way in which you can introduce a more beautiful, how can I say, treatment to this, may well generate a special product. And we have some ideas which we can elaborate on, which is very much about creating special units which will alternate between a kind of prismatic glass, which will be a sealed unit, not just a single sheet, for higher insulation, and which could alternate between clear glass. And then these reflect the light. So you could have very beautiful quality from the inside and an extraordinary quality from the outside, which is not just a kind of bland glass, kind of dumb greenhouse. I think it's much more subtle than that. So in this visualization, and you'll see further visualizations later, these become, in a way, quite subtle and combine the vertical and the 45 degrees. I forgot I did introduce this right at the last moment. I put the building in here. It fits very, very beautifully, and this in a way is reminding me that it's identifiable, but very, very much, for me, a New York building. I think to be distinguished and notable, this building doesn't have to indulge in a kind of look at me hysteria of sculptural shapes and so on. We feel that this expression of the grid and the 90-degree geometry is absolutely right for the building and for the neighborhood. Something triggered an awareness on our part, which was that most of our perception of this building had been really very much from this viewpoint, but the views from the east are quite significant. And also, whether that's the views to the building or the views out of the building. And you placed a very high priority on these corners here. The idea that they would be free of structure, because there was something magic about a corner, whether that was from the outside, but particularly from the inside. And during that conversation, we realized the possibility of reconfiguring the plan so that you could actually get corners which looked out eastward. We went back and we invoked this and other images of Hugh Ferris because we felt that there was a very, very strong New York thread through this building, whether that's Park Avenue, which is very special in all kinds of ways that we can talk about, in terms of the way that you preserve the frontage or its artistic heritage. But the setback, whether that's as of right or whether it's cultivated, and in a way Hugh Ferris encapsulated that. Now, of course, there's another line of thought that you could say, well, maybe it's more interesting to break with that and do something which is totally opposite, whatever the word is. And I think that the challenge of this building in terms of its exterior is, I think the balance is to be a New York building, a Park Avenue building, but at the same time to add something perhaps with some dimension which doesn't actually exist. How can you, without being indulgent or without being kitschy, how can you translate in today's terms something that will be a signature pinnacle to a building? If you did say that in terms of a collaboration with, say, James Turrell, in terms of lighting the base of this building, because that is in the public domain in the street, and then maybe if you extended the core structure out, you get the final progression down to 2 bays. But really what you need to do is at this point your eye level is somewhere around that of a seagull or a helicopter, which is somewhere near the top of the building. And imagine that these, as fins, are very delicate colors, pastels, almost white, a hint of yellow, but they change over a 2 or 3 hour cycle. Suddenly, I'm not saying it's the final flourish or finish to the building, and it's an honorable building without it, but once you become, in a way, accustomed to seeing something like this, it suddenly looks as though it's sort of undressed as a building. And what happens here is that you do get the opportunity to express the continuity of that line of the facade. I didn't think this building should, in terms of its night lighting, be saying, hey, look at me, I'm standing out on Park. I felt that the lighting should be about the base of the building, the public domain there, and it should be about the summit of the building. Then I think that there's a possibility, whether it's office space or whether it's very special, for these terraces to give the extraordinary spaces in the sky, which could combine landscaping and extraordinary views, the views which makes this city different from any other city. Although the building conforms to the street facade and in that respect respects the urbanity of Park, it also has its own very strong personality.